The Midi Fighter Twister is one of the most unassuming pieces of tech I've ever encountered. The thing comes in black or in white. Obviously I got the black one here, and it almost has a nice rotational symmetry, except for the rings around the buttons or the knobs. On the top it has the USB port. On the sides it has a total of 6 kind of mushy buttons, and on the bottom it has the Midi Fighter logo. It has really high ratings. Everyone loves this thing, so it's kind of a mystery why, if it's just 16 knobs. So it must have something to do with how great these endless encoders feel. Resistance on them is just right, and well, they're endless, so they just turn infinitely. Maybe it's because the knobs are also buttons, or maybe it's because of the build quality. The stems on the rubber knobs are made of solid steel, and they're very, very durable. It seems like you could drive over them with a tank and they would survive. It just has a very luxurious feel. Nice grippy rubber. It also has very nice grippy rubber feet so it doesn't slip. It feels very nice. But is it worth the €230 price tag? Well, let's find out. Once plugged in, the rings around the knobs light up in many pretty colors, if you program it to light up in many pretty colors. When pressing the side buttons on the twister, we can switch between banks. We have 4 different banks in total, and we have 2 shift buttons as well that we have available. Now the shift buttons are a little bit weird to use, but I can also have some added functionality for Tractor if I were to use Tractor. By pressing these 2 middle buttons, this one and this one, and together they do this. And this is sort of like a step sequencer for some like weird effects stuff for Tractor, and it's really quite neat. So you can imagine like this looks like a step sequencer for hi-hats or kicks or whatever, and that's just built in. So it can do much more than just these 4 banks of knobs, and that's pretty crazy, but you have to script that, or you have to find someone that made a script for that. But the basic functionality, let's look at that first. Every knob has a twist and a press function, and together they really enable you to get some pretty fantastic functionality. Let's first look at the twisting function because it's the main element. And the twisting function is rather simple, really elegantly implemented, but if you want it to be, it can be delightfully complex as well. So there's an LED ring around it with a chosen color at the bottom here that I chose to be kind of like a rainbow on this screen, and I chose to be more like this on some other banks. So you can adjust that yourself, and you can make it look really, really nice. There is about 20 different colors that you can choose from, I believe. Then at the top, these have a dot, these 8, and these ones do not. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. And those can change color between red and blue as well, and somewhere sort of in between, but mostly just pinkish purple. And this one goes a little bit more towards blue, this one more towards red. And all the color in between, there is none, it is just white. So you can see here, these are just white. All right, so that's the LED ring. And you can see that there are different indicator ring types, if you will. This one is just a dot, so it's called the dot. This one is a bar that just jumps up in LED, and what I mean with that becomes clear when I twist this one, because you can see this one is called the blended bar, and it starts to blend in the next, or blend out the next LED in the ring. So you have the dot, the bar, and the blended bar. You also have 2 different speeds at which you can twist it. So you have a responsive mode, and you can pay attention to my thumb, the location of my thumb and the location of the LED ring, and this one is high resolution, so I have to twist it more. Maybe it's more clear if I do it on this side. So this is responsive and this is high resolution, so I have to twist it quite a bit more, and it seems on the video quite subtle, but it's a nice amount. The responsive is quite responsive and the high resolution is more precise, and it's pretty much exactly how you would want them. There's two ways to use a knob, basically, which is with detent. So these are with detent, which means that they go left, and they go right, like that, and they have a middle setting. And the other way to use them is just as you are familiar with, is with a knob that just goes from 0 to 127 in Midi language, but just 0% to 100%. And yeah, that's pretty nice. You have two versions. What's really nice about this detent is that it has so-called a sticky middle, or at least that's what I call it, a sticky middle. So that's when you twist it, it's quite easy to keep it in the middle. Here you can still twist it a little bit and it doesn't move all the way. So it's quite easy to get it in the middle, even if you can't see the LED. Like I can not see the LED at the top right now, but I can probably get it in the middle. I'm not sure. Yeah, there we go. This one still. Yeah, there we go. So you can get it pretty much in the middle without even having to look at it. And that's a really nice feature. So that I call it the sticky middle, and it's about a 20-degree turn. So that's quite a lot. But even if you're doing a quick sweep, you don't really notice it. So it's really well implemented. There's also something that I think a lot of people would buy this thing for, which is called the super knob function. And I put the super knob, I think, on this button or another one, and I'll show you how you can use it. But the super knob basically makes it so that from 12 o'clock to all the way over here, like 5 o'clock, it is a different CC message than this part. So it sends one CC message, let's say channel 1, or just CC1, and then it turns into CC2 on the same channel. I misspoke there. So same channel, CC1, CC2. And that's pretty incredible. It can do quite a lot of stuff with that. And you can use that on these types of knobs, just the normal linear things. And you can also use super knob on the detent. So there's some really cool functionality you can do with that. Now the second part of the functionality is the button that's on every knob. And the buttons also have 8 different functions. So let's go through those. They're on these different buttons. So first one, you can see it changes the color of the LED. Not very useful in itself. And if I change the value of the knob, if I press the button, it also stays on that value. What this does is it is a CC note, so it's just a CC trigger. So you can send a CC message to some kind of thing in your DAW. I use this functionality to select parts of my DAW, select clips, that kind of stuff. Then there's also this one, which toggles the LED, so it toggles the different function. So it's a CC and hold message. And I use that for recording. If I want to know that this part is recording, so I can assign this to a specific clip, and I see that it is red, so it is recording. Red means recording. Then I also have this one, which is, let me check real quick. Oh, this is just a note. So this would play a single note that you can just customize which note it plays. So it sends MIDI information, so a VST can actually play notes. Not that useful. This kind of goes the same, but it's a note hold. You can obviously assign notes to do specific functions in a DAW as well. Then this is where it gets more interesting, because this is the reset button. So you can get like an effect, like a reverb on there, and just doot, and it's gone. And that's very, very useful because, you know, sometimes you want to do like a high pass on a certain track, and you want the high pass to be gone right at the right moment when like the drop hits or whatever, and you just press the button. That's really nice. This one is also quite nice because it gives me fine adjustment control. So you see that I have to twist it quite a lot to get to the end. Let me see if I can twist it with one finger. So you see I have to do quite a few rotations to get it all the way down. And that's the fine adjustment. Normally it's like this, but with the fine adjustment you have to twist it quite a lot. So that's nice for EQing when you're sculpting stuff in your EQs. And then you have the encoder shift. So this is my favorite function, and that is if I put a value on the orange knob, I get a red knob that can send a different value. So this message is different from this message. So I can actually control two separate parameters with just one knob. This one does the same, but it's a toggle. And sometimes you would choose a toggle over a switch. It kind of depends on the situation or what you prefer. I often use the press, so it's just a press button, and you can change it, and then it switches right back to this one. So that's all the different button functions. And there's really a lot of combinations that you can create because you got the detent versions, you got the normal linear button versions, and the reset button is just really, really nice. It's such a good function on stuff like for DJ sets. It's really quite amazing. Now I showed you before this thing. This is a specific script that came with the Midi fighter. I think they load it on the Midi fighter when they ship it. And you can find different types of scripts that do different types of things, like react to your DAW, that auto map certain knobs for you. So you can actually script your own stuff on the Midi fighter, which is fantastic because that just adds to the functionality so much. I know that there's this program called Remotify that you can use to create scripts for MIDI controllers and put them into Ableton, and it makes it so you don't have to learn how to script this kind of stuff because it gets kind of complicated. And I know that MIDI Fighter or DJ Tech Tools endorses that stuff, that Remotify. And the CEO has said that it's really good with the Midi fighter. So I'm going to look at that. It is paid to get the full version, so I'm going to see if I can eventually purchase that and get some remote scripts for the Midi fighter to do some really, really cool stuff. It also gets more complex. It already is a very complex thing that you have to spend quite a bit of time with to get familiar with, and scripting is just going to make it that much more complex. The thing with this is that it has no really nice visual feedback. Of course, it has the colors and all that, but you still have to remember all the buttons. And if you have every button doing this thing with 2 knobs, then you have 128 different knobs, and you can put an extra script in. You have to remember all those functions. So that's kind of hard about this thing. It's just 16 knobs, and you have to remember everything about it. So you need to practice a lot with this thing. And obviously, while you're practicing, you're going to find that some things work, others don't work so well. You're going to be changing certain aspects of this stuff in the software. And that's really easy to do, so that's really great. But it's really complex. So, do you want something really complex? Here it is. It does everything. So that's nice. I also really quickly want to note the uses of the endless encoders. Before I had the Twister, I got myself a Behringer X-Touch Mini, because it has endless encoders. And the reason for having endless encoders is that you can have a digitally defined position so that the controller can send a signal to the DAW about its position, but also the other way around. So the DAW can send something about its position to the MIDI fighter. And if this weren't the case, it wouldn't be able to automatically map to macros and such quite so nicely. And if you twist a knob, you'd have to get to a certain pickup value, which means that the knob does nothing unless you pass the point that the DAW has set it at. There's different ways you can kind of get around that, but this is a very nice way to do it. You can kind of think of it as motorized faders, because faders also have a set position in space, and if you change a parameter in your DAW, it doesn't correspond to the position in space anymore. But if you have motorized faders, they go along with it, and it looks really cool. It's like a ghost using faders. So this is kind of like the knob version of motorized faders. I guess we can also get motorized knobs. Can someone make some motorized knobs for me? That'd be cool. Can we get motorized knobs? Thanks. This is just a little taste of the MIDI Fighter Twister. It's a review colored by my own creativity and goals with this piece of hardware. Remotify is going to make this thing more expansive still. It's probably going to make it much more complex, like I said. If you want to support me and you want to know whenever I post a new video, you know how YouTube works. There's some buttons to press. And as always, if you know someone that could use this information, share it with them. Now don't forget, having Roman pillars made of marble in your house is not decadent at all. It's just a sign of your power as a human being over Mother Nature.